A good day to everyone, especially to our professor, Ma'am Joy Liza. So we are the group 3, together with my co-reporters in this group, Miss Angela Tumaob, Mr. Norman Lumpingan, Miss Sarah May Ahmad, and Mr. Jason Mangansakan. So our topic is in chapter 3 and it's all about elements and principles of design. So before that, I am going to explain what the elements and principles of design all about. So the elements and principles of design are the building blocks used to create a work of art. The elements of design can be thought of as the things that make up a painting, drawing, design. The principles of design can be thought of as what we do to the elements of design. So what are the main purpose why the elements and principles of design are made? So the principles of design are made of various mixes of the elements of design all put together in one picture, making the picture look better. When more than one principle is used together, an artist can create an artwork that will amaze people and get good publicity, hopefully benefiting the artist who made them. To begin with, whether an artist creates two-dimensional or three-dimensional art, works in a traditional medium like painting, or makes art using the latest technology, all artists use the same basic visual building blocks of form and strategies of visual organization to achieve visual unity. So in this section, you will learn about the differences between form and content and be introduced to the basic elements and principles of design. You'll also learn about the types of representation in art. Although these concepts are integral to formalism, which is a method of studying artwork by analyzing and describing it purely in terms of visual effects. So here's the personal view. When we're looking at art, when we find or run into an artwork or exhibition, we typically have an initial response or impression. This response to what we see or hear is formed by a lifetime of knowledge and experience and the culture and time in which we live. The expression "beauty lies in the eye of the beholder" gets at the subjective and personal nature of perception and of the first impression in particular. There's nothing wrong with the one first impression or response. It is, after all, a personal response. It is your point of view. So this time, I am going to explain the formal analysis. So formal analysis is a close and analytical way of looking at and discussing a work of art. It includes describing the work in terms of various design elements such as color, shape, texture, line, lighting, mass, and space, as well as discussing of how those elements had been used. Formal analysis also moves beyond description of the work and its content by linking the elements of the work to the effects that they have on the viewer. This is discussion of the artwork from the point of view of here it is the artwork and this is what I see and I can make a sense of. Formal analysis uses art terminology to consider the effects of an artwork or the viewer, and it is the process that enables us to think about and consider the overall meaning of the artwork. So here in formal analysis, we are going to critique, we are going to know how the artwork is made. So here in the formal analysis, this is an important technique for organizing visual information. That's why, in other words, it is a strategy used to translate what you see into written words. This strategy can be applied to any work of art from any period in history. Since then, whether a photograph, whether it is a sculpture, whether it is a painting, or cultural artifact. Dito sa formal analysis, it is very helpful especially sa ating mga viewer. Kasi minsan, yung iba ginajudge nila kung ano yung art. Minsan sinasabi nila, ay yung art is, bakit naguhubad yung babae dito sa painting? Kasi hindi nila alam yung deep meaning. That's why formal analysis made to describe, to analyze, to interpret, and to evaluate what is art all about. That's why this formal analysis is very helpful to us, especially as a viewer, to understand what is the meaning of this art all about. So here's the example of formal analysis. So pinapakita dito na ini-explain ng maayos kung ano yung meaning ng art. That's why this formal analysis is very helpful. Nakikita natin dito kung paano pinapaliwanag, ini-evaluate at kuni-critic yung art sa pamamagitan ng written words. So the next topic that I will be discussing is all about content. Content is simply the subject matter of an artwork. It's the image you can see, like the trees in a painting of a forest, or the town, the sky, and the moon. In Van Gogh's Starry Night, content can play a role in a formal analysis, but the content aspect is less important than the artwork aspect. Content is revealed through the formal properties of the work and may be evident on a number of levels. There is the immediate or obvious content of a work. For instance, it may be an historical scene, a landscape, a portrait, an interior, a fictional object, or an abstraction. Beyond this, the content may become more complex. It is about what is happening in the works, what meaning you derive from them, and whether or not they create a particular mood or reaction. Sometimes content can be difficult to assess because it may be ambiguous or obscure. The formal elements of the work and its title can often help to read the content, as can recurring patterns, motifs, or symbols that may have special significance. So dito sa content is may hint na tayo. Parang what you see is what you get. Because when we're talking about art, every piece is composed of three parts: the subject, form, and content. The subject is the main focus of object of an art, whereas the content is the overall meaning of the piece. What is the content and subject matter of the painting? Subject matter in artworks is what the image or object literally represents. The content is what the artwork means. In short, subject matter content is an integration of facts, concept, principles, the hypothesis, the theories, the manipulative skills, the values, and the attitudes, so that the subject matter content includes cognitive skills and affective components. So content, a work of the art, refers to what is being depicted. So, pag nakikita pa lang natin yung arts, like yung sa Starry Nights ni Van Gogh's, parang, oh, alam na natin Starry Nights to kasi what you see is what you get. It appears in the visual arts in several forms, all of which may be figurative or realistic or abstract or distorted. Among them are portraits, landscapes, still lifes, genre art, or etc. So we are down to artistic elements. So this is the last part that I'm going to report. So what is artistic elements? Elements of art, like mediums, are present in every art form. The elements or the abstract aspect comprises the artwork, while mediums are material used by the artist to create the artwork. So para hindi tayo malito, the elements or the abstract aspect comprises the artwork, while mediums are the materials used by the artist to create the artwork. All arts have certain elements of their own. So number 1, point. What is point? Point is the visual element upon which all others are based. It can be defined as a singularity in a space, or in a geometric terms, the area where two coordinates meet. So ito yung artwork kung saan kahit point lang, makakagawa tayo ng napakagandang drawing or art. When an artist marks a simple point on a surface, they immediately create a figure-ground relationship. That is, they divide the work between its surface and anything added to it. Our eyes differentiate between the two, and their arrangement has everything to do with how we see a final composition. The point itself can be used as a way to create forms. So for example, yung pointillism is a style of painting made by the famous French artist Georges Seurat in the late 19th century. So yung pointillism art, guys, it is an artwork where the artist create by doing just a single point. nakakagawa siya ng napakagandang drawing. At tayo namang mga viewer, nakakatch yung attention natin. Napapatanong tayo, wow, that's amazing. How the artist create that? So, the point is, the shape and the forms with a composition looked very amazing. So, nandito yung mga example guys na ipapakita ko kung saan yung mga drawings na ginagamitan lang ng point is nagre-result siya ng napakagandang image. This is some of the 𝑬𝒍𝒆𝒏𝒕� I got this from Pinterest. Nakuha ko to siya. At this 𝑬𝒍𝒆𝒏𝒕� artwork is na-cover siya guys. Because tingnan nyo naman, napakagandang image. And also, Paul Signac created this Grand Canal Venice na pointillism artwork. Sobrang ganda. Nung nakita ko to, napasabi ako, even if it's just a single point pala, nagkakaroon pa talaga ng art. Kaya tama pala yung sinabi ng philosopher once said, everything is an art because everything you see is art.
Good day everyone, this is 𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒕� reporting line. Line is essentially when you put two or more points together, you create a line. A line can be lyrically defined as a point in motion. There are many different types of lines, all characterized by their length being greater than their width. Lines can be static or dynamic depending on how the artist chooses to use them. They help determine the motion, direction, and energy in a work of art. We see line all around us in our daily lives. Telephone wires, tree branches, jet trails, and winding roads are just a few examples. It is defined as a mark that connects the spaces between 2 points, taking any form along the way. Lines are foundation of drawing. It is defined by a point moving in space. First type of lines is actual lines. Actual lines are those that are physically present. The edge of the wooden stretcher bar at the left of Las Menanas is an actual line, as are picture frames in the background and the linear decorative elements on some of those figures' dresses. If to say actual line, as its name implies, a line that actually exists. The next one is implied lines. Implied lines are those created by visually connecting two or more areas together. The space between the Infanta Margarita, the blonde central figure in the composition, and the Menanas, or maid of honors, to the left and right of her, are implied lines. Both set off of a diagonal relationship that implies movement. By visually connecting the space between the heads of all figures in a painting, we have a sense of jog motion that keeps the lower part of the composition in motion, balanced against and darker, more static upper areas of the painting. Implied lines can also be created when two areas of different colors or tones came together. Implied lines that are suggested by changes in color, tone, and texture by the edges of shapes. So there are 5 types of implied lines. There are vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curved, and S-curves lines. The next one is straight or classic lines. Provide structure to a composition. They can be oriented to horizontal, vertical, or diagonal axis of a surface. Straight lines can be nature visually stable, while still giving direction to a composition. In Las Menanas, you can see them in canvas supports on the left. the wall supports and the doorways on the right and the background and mattresses and the wall spaces between the framed pictures. Moreover, the small horizontal lines created in the stair edges in the background help anchor the entire visual design of the painting. If we say straight lines, artists use it in early design stages of creating art more often than curves because you can formalize, measure, and relate a straight line easier than you can a curved line. Than a curved line. Using straight lines allows the artist to place all their composition of elements in a design grid accurately. The next one is expressive lines. Expressive lines are curved, adding an organic, more dynamic character to a work of art. Expressive lines are often rounded and follow undetermined paths. In Las Bananas, you can see them in the aprons of the girls, dresses, and the dog's folded hind leg and coat pattern. Expressive lines is line quality can bring meaning or mood to a drawing through association and connecting the artist's arm and hand with its physical quality of emotion. There are other kinds of line that encompass the characteristics of those above yet, taken together, help create additional artistic elements and richer, more varied compositions. Refer to the images and examples below to become familiar with these types of line. Outline or contour line is the simplest of this. They create a path around the edge of a shape. In fact, outlines define shapes. Contour is an outline, boundary, or border, usually of curved shape, while outline is a line making the boundary of an object figure. The next one is a cross contour lines. Cross contour lines follow paths across the shape of delineate differences in the surface feature. They give flat shapes a sense of form, the illusion of three dimensions, and can also be used to create shading. They are the lines that reflect the movement of your eye and around what you see. Just think of topographical map. The line move across the terrain. Cross contour lines do the same thing. That will be all my report. Thank you.
So good afternoon everyone, especially to our Professor Ms. Julissa Mukia. By the way, I'm Norman Lumpingan from Group 3. So let's proceed to the main discussion. So first, hatch lines are repeated at short intervals in generally one direction. They give shading and visual texture to the surface of an object. Hatching lines are several lines drawn close together to create areas of shadow in a drawing. They are most used when producing drawings to be etched onto metal printing plates. So, ang hatching lines daw ay mga linya-linyang pinagdidikit-dikit, pinagtatagpi-tagpi upang makabuo ng guhit. Ang halimbawa nito ay kapag bumuo ng guhit na nakaukit sa mga metal na plato. Second, cross-hatch lines provide additional tone and texture. They can oriented in any direction. Multiple layers of cross-hatch line can give rich and varied shading to object by manipulating the pressure of the drawing tool to create a large range of values. Cross-hatching is a method of line drawing that describes light and shadow. The presentation of light utilizes the while or opens of the page, while shadow is created by a density of cross lines. Ang cross-hatching ay isang paraan upang makagawa ng guhit o isang paraan sa pamamagitan ng tanda ng dalawa o higit pang intersecting parallel lines. So the difference between hatching and cross-hatching is that hatching is a method of shading areas of a drawing or diagram with fine parallel lines, while cross-hatching is a method of showing shading by means of multiple small lines that intersect. So the third, calligraphic lines use quickness in gesture, more akin to paint strokes to imbue an artwork with a fluid lyrical character. Calligraphy lines that are generally flowing and rhythmical like the equalities found in calligraphy. Base sa pagkakaunawa ko, itong calligraphic lines ay madalas na inuukit o ginuguhit, madalas itong nakikita like for example sa mga furniture at iba pa. So let's proceed to shape. A shape is defined as an enclosed area in two dimensions. By definition, shapes are always implied and flat in nature. They can be created in many ways, the simplest by enclosing an area with an outline. They can also be made by surrounding an area with other shapes or the replacement of different texture next to each other. For instance, the shape of an island surrounded by water. Because they are more complex dim lines, shapes do much of the heavy lifting in arranging composition. The abstract example below gives us an idea of how shapes are made. Shapes animate figure. Ground relationships, we visually determine positive shape, the figure, in the negative shape, the ground. So I explain the positive shape and negative shape. First, positive shapes are the shape of actual objects. In the example of this is the steel frame. The workers in the frame act as positive shapes. They are almost in silhouette, and this unites them through color, while the negative shapes are the areas between these objects. Like for example, the gutters, margins, and the space between columns are all examples of negative space within a graphic design context. In one way to understand this is to open your hand and spread your fingers apart. Your hand is the positive shape. In the space around it becomes the negative shape. You can also see this in the example above. The shape formed by the black outline becomes positive because it's enclosed. The area around it is negative. The same visual arrangement goes with the gray circle in the purple square. But identifying positive and negative shapes can get tricky in a more complex composition. For instance, the squares and rectangles have edges that touch each other, thus creating a solid where shape in the center. The two rectangles don't actually connect, yet still give us an implied shape in the center, which would you say is the positive shape. What about the circle surrounding the gray star shape? Remember, positive shape is one that is distinguished from the background. In Las Meninas, the painting of Diego Velázquez presented above, so we define the Las Meninas shape characters. Referring back to Velázquez's Las Meninas, it is fundamentally an arrangement of shapes, organic and hard edged, light, dark, and mid-tone, that solidifies the composition within the larger shape of canvas. In Las Meninas, one of we know the most famous and controversial artworks of all time, Las Meninas, the Trade of Honor, is regarded as a dialogue between artist and viewer. So let's proceed. The figures becomes the positive shapes because they are lit dramatically and hold our attention against the dark background. What about the dark figure standing in the doorways? Here the dark shapes becomes the positive one surrounded by a wild background. Our eyes always return to this figure as an answer to the painting's entire composition. In three dimensions, positive shapes are those that make up the actual work. The negative shapes are the empty spaces around and sometimes permeating through the work itself. Number 4 is space. Space is the empty area surrounding real or implied object. Humans category space. A. Outer space, that limitless void we enter beyond our sky. B. Inner space, which resides in people's minds and imaginations. C. Personal space that important but intangible area that surrounds its individuals in which is violated if someone else gets too close. Pictorial space is flat in the digital realm. Besides, in cyberspace, art responds to all of these kinds of space. So, other term, space art, also astronomical art, is the term for a genre of modern artistic expression that strives to show the wonders of the universe. Like other genres, space art has many facets and encompasses realism, impressionism, hardware art, sculpture, abstract imagery, even zoological art. So I'll give you an example. For example, a metal sculpture may have a hole in the middle which we could call negative space. Henry Morey used such spaces in his free-form sculptures, such as recumbent figure in 1938 and 1952, helmet head and shoulders in two-dimensional art. Negative space can have great impact. So here ends of my discussion. Thank you. Next reporter, please.
Hello everyone, I'm 𝑬𝒍𝒆𝒏𝒕𔥬. Today I'm gonna explain what is color and the perspectives. So color is the most complex artistic element because of the combinations and variations inherent in its use. So this means na ito yung pinakamahirap na or pinakakomplikado na element dahil sa combinations and variations in its use. Either combinations of colors, kung ano yung mga pwede mong i-mix or i-combine na color, and kung ano yung pagkakaiba ng paggamit dito. Kasi there are colors na hindi siya compatible sa ibang colors, hindi siya pwede i-mix kasi iba yung kinalalabasan niya. And humans respond to color combinations differently, and artists study and use color in part to give desired direction to their work. So yung mga tao is may iba't ibang pananaw or respond sa color combinations. Either may mga tao na iba't iba yung kulay or colors na kanilang kino-combine para sa paggamit nila dito. And yung mga artist din is pinag-aaralan muna nila kung paano gamitin or ano yung color na pwede nilang gamitin para mas mabigyan ng buhay yung kanilang work. For examples is yung sa painting or sa mga painters. Yung painters, pinag-aaralan muna nila kung ano yung mga color or kung paano gamitin yung mga color na ginagamit nila sa kanilang pagpipaint. And the study of color in art and design often starts with color theory. Color theory splits up colors into three categories: primary, secondary, and tertiary. The basic tools used is a color wheel developed by Isaac Newton in 1666. A more complex model known as the color tree created by Albert Munsell shows the spectrum made up of sets of tints and shades on connected planes. So, the study of color in art and design is nag-simulate to sa color theory. So, yung color theory is dito na nahati yung mga colors into three categories, which are primary, secondary, and tertiary. So, ang basic tools na ginagamit dito is yung color wheel, which is developed by Isaac Newton noong 1666. So, color tree is also a more complex model. Ito yung isa din ito ang pinakamahirap na or pinakakomplikadong model na created by Albert Munsell. Yung color tree is it shows the spectrum made up of sets of tints and shades and connected planes. So, traditional color theory is a qualitative attempt to organize colors and their relationships. It is based on Newton's color wheel and continues to be the most common system used by artists. It uses the same principles as subtractive color mixing but prefers different primary colors. So, yung traditional color theory is dito na na-organize yung colors and ng relationship sa isa't isa. So, based on Newton's color wheel, ito na din yung patuloy na ginagamit or most common system na ginagamit ng mga artists sa paggamit nila ng iba't ibang color. Ito na yung ginagamit nila na system. And it uses the same principles as subtractive color mixing, but they prefers paggamit ng iba't ibang primary colors. So the primary colors, the secondary colors, and the tertiary colors is ito na yung three categories according to color theory. So primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. You find them equidistant from each other on the color wheel. These are the elemental colors not produced by mixing any other colors, and all other colors are derived from some combination of these three. Ito na yung hindi nahahaluan ng ibang colors. Hindi sila nahahaluan ng ibang colors or hindi sila na-combine sa ibang colors. So, yung primary colors, ito na yung red, blue, and yellow. Yan na yung mga hindi nahahaluan na ibang colors. So, and next, the secondary colors are orange, mix of red and yellow, green, mix of blue and yellow, and violet, mix of blue and red. So yung secondary colors, ito na yung mga colors na nahaluan na ng ibang colors or nami-mix na sila sa ibang colors. So for example is yung orange. Pag i-mix natin yung red and yellow, ang result nun is orange. Pag i-mix naman natin yung blue and yellow, ang result nun is green. And pag i-mix natin yung blue and red, ang result nun is violet. Yun ang secondary colors. The tertiary colors are obtained by mixing one primary color and one secondary color. Depending on amount of color used, different hues can be obtained such as red-orange or yellow-green. Neutral colors, browns, and grays can be mixed using the three primary colors together. So, yung tertiary colors is, ito na yung hinahalo or minimix na dito yung isang primary color and isang secondary color. And nakadepende ito sa amount or gano'ng kakapal or gano'ng kadami yung color na nagamit. So, ang examples dito na tertiary colors is yung blue-green. So, yung blue is yun yung primary colors and yung green, yun yung secondary colors. So, pag i-mix natin yan sila, yun, which is blue-green, yun na yun ang tertiary colors. So, ang ibang examples dito is red-orange, blue-green, yellow-green, red-violet. So, yun yung na-form by mixing up primary. So, by mixing one primary colors and one secondary colors. So, neutral colors naman is ito yung browns and grays. So pag i-mix mo yung tatlong primary colors, yun na yung lalabas, either brown and gray. There are many attributes to color. Each one has an effect on how we perceive it. Hue refers to color itself, but also to the variations of a color. So hue is ito na yung determined by the dominant wavelength of the light or light of color. So, for example, is yung aqua blue. Next, value, as I discussed previously, refers to the relative lightness or darkness of one color next to another. The color or the value of a color. So, color, depende na rin sa paggamit natin dito. Dito na natin ang relative ng or connected ng lightness or darkness of one color at next to another. So, a color na dark, um, if if yung background natin is dark, it will appear lighter. And if our background is light, it will appear darker. Yun yung value. Makikita natin doon kung ano yung pagkakaiba ng isang color, depende kung paano natin to siya gamitin. Tone refers to the gradation or subtle changes made to a color when it's mixed with the gray created by adding two complements. You can see various color tones by looking at the color tree mentioned in the paragraph. So this refers dito na kung ano yung pagbabago ng color when it mixed with a gray created by adding two complements. For example, is yung if we mix the two colors of in primary, then yun na yung tone. And you can see various color tones by looking at the same color. Or it is also created when gray is added to a color. The final tone depends on the amount of black and white used, and tones may be lighter or darker than the original hue. And next, saturation refers to the purity and intensity of a color. The primaries are the most intense and pure, but diminish as they mix to form other colors. The creation of tints and shades also diminish a color's saturation. Two colors two colors work strongest together when they share the same intensity. This is called equiluminance. So, according in color theory, saturations defines a range from pure color 100% to gray, which is 0%. So, saturation is sometimes referred to as color intensity. A fully saturated color is one of pure color, while a fully desaturated color appears as gray color. So, for example is dun pag nag-edit tayo ng pictures natin sa sa um, sa cellphone, if sa if yung saturation natin is i-full natin as 100%, yung kulay ng example is yung kulay ng balat mo is red. If i-full natin yon into a 100%, yung magiging resulta na ng picture natin is para siyang magiging red na siya na parang orange. So if i-minus naman natin or ipunta na naman natin siya in 0%, yung color ng pictures natin from original pictures is magiging gray na siya, as in wala na siyang kulay. So two colors work strongest together when they share the same intensity. Ito na yung tinatawag natin na equiluminance. Yun yung saturation.
Perspective. Perspective deals with the effect of distance upon the appearance of objects by means of which the eye judges spatial relationships. Clearly, artists are as concerned with space in their work as they are with, say, color or form. There are many ways for the artist to present ideas of space. Remember that many cultures traditionally use pictorial space as a window to view realistic matter or to view realistic subject matter through the subject matter they present ideas, narratives, and symbolic content. The innovation of linear perspective and implied geometric pictorial construct dating from 15th century Europe afford us the accurate illusion of three-dimensional space on a flat surface and appears to recede into the distance through the use of horizon line and vanishing points. See how perspective is set up in the schematic example. So the perspective is it deals with the effect of distance or kung gaano kalawak or kaliit yung distance sa isang or sa appearance ng isang objects. So yung mga artist is concerned sila sa kanilang space or sa space ng kanilang output, or for example is dun sa painting. Kailangan malaki yung space na magagamit mo kung ikaw ay magpipaint, kasi hindi mo masigurado kung kakasya ba dun yung pictures or object ng ipipaint mo, kasi if maliit lang yung space ng painting mo, is may possibility na hindi mo ma-paint yung buo ng picture or picture ng ipinipaint mo. Or for example, yung tao yung ipipaint mo, hindi mo masigurado kung magkasya dun yung tao kung maliit ang space ng painting mo. So kailangan malapad talaga. At saka remember na marami ding kultura, yung cultures traditionally yung ginagamit nilang pictorial space is yung sa window. 'Di ba? Kadalasan may mga nakikita tayo na mga painting or pictures na nasa window sila, and it shows na dun sa window is it shows how realistic the subject or gaano ka creative yung isang tao. At dito na din natin yung ma-present natin yung narratives and symbolic content. So bawat na nakikita natin is lahat ay may meaning, or lahat may pinipresent kung ano yung idea ng isang artist. So dun sa the innovation of linear perspective, it implied an geometric pictorial construct dating from 15th century Europe. So dito na natin na susukat kung or it affords us the accurate illusion of three-dimensional space on flat surface, and appears to recede into the distance through the use of horizon line and vanishing points. That's all. Thank you.
Good day! I am here to introduce to you the three perspectives in principle of design. First is one-point perspective. Occurs when the receding lines appear to converge at a single point on the horizon, and used when the flat front of an object is facing the viewer. A classic Renaissance artwork using one-point perspective is Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper from 1498. Da Vinci composes the work by locating the vanishing point directly behind the head of Christ, thus drawing the viewer's attention to the center. One-point perspective has a single vanishing point. It is usually useful when the subject is viewed front on, for example, when you're looking directly at the face of a cube. Another example, just imagine yourself standing in the middle of a straight railroad track. You know the rails are the same distance apart throughout their length, and yet as you look into the distance, they appear to come together and meet at a point on the horizon. Second, 2 points perspective occurs when the vertical edge of cube is facing the viewer, exposing two sides that recede into the distance, one to each vanishing point. View 𝑬𝒍𝒆𝒏𝒕𝒔 Street, rainy day from 1877 to see how 2 points perspective is used to give an accurate view to an urban scene. 2-point perspective as a two vanishing point. For example, I will draw the line in the building to understand it. The yellow line is the horizon line, and the two red dots are the vanishing points. So, you can see how not the only one building is using the 2 points perspectives, but the rest of the objects in the painting are following the same lines. I've outlined the sidewalk too, so you can see how it's also using the same vanishing points. At the last, 3-point perspective is used when an artist wants to project a bird's eye view, that is, when the projections line recedes to 2 points on the horizon and the third either far above or below the horizon line. In this case, The parallel lines that make up the sides of an object are not parallel to the edge of ground the artist is working on, paper, canvas, etc. Also, 3 points perspective is the complex form perspective drawing. 3 points perspective uses 3 sets of orthogonal lines and 3 vanishing points to draw its object, which means the 3 points perspective is a complicated than the 1 point and 2 point perspective. 3 point perspective uses the 3 lines of orthogonal and 3 vanishing points. Orthogonal is intersecting or lying at right angles, and the vanishing points means is a point at which receding parallel lines seems to meet when represented in linear perspective.